I remember the exact moment I realized I was already alone in the room. It wasn't the emptiness itself, it was the way everyone looked at me, like I'd suddenly become the villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. The chatter stopped mid-sentence. Plates clinked, forks paused in midair, and there was this sharp, quiet weight pressing down on my chest, heavier than anything I'd felt before. I had just said something that, at the time, felt simple, almost necessary. A truth I thought mattered more than appearances. And yet, as the words left my mouth, I saw it, the way my friends, my closest family, all recoiled, like I'd handed them something dangerous they didn't want to touch. "Why would you even say that?" My sister whispered, her voice trembling, not with anger, not exactly, but with some mixture of disbelief and disappointment that I couldn't place. I tried to laugh it off. Nervously. I just thought. My words trailed off under their stares, thick with judgment, suspicion, and something I hated to admit, fear, and then came the silence. Long, suffocating silence, the kind that doesn't let you hide behind small talk or excuses. I wanted to ask questions. I wanted someone to argue, to explain why they were looking at me like I'd broken the rules of existence. But no one spoke. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were waiting. Waiting for me to apologize. To take it back, to pretend nothing had happened. I didn't, and in that moment, I realized that what I had done, whatever it was, had changed everything. I didn't know it yet, but from this point forward, nothing would feel safe again. I guess I should explain who everyone was, because without that, it sounds like I'm overreacting. My circle had always been tight, almost too comfortable. There was my sister, Lila, who had a knack for reading people but rarely shared her own thoughts. Then my best friend, Mark. He'd been around since middle school, the kind of friend who remembers every embarrassing story about you and somehow never lets you live any of them down. And finally, my parents, who, well, they had their own unshakable way of thinking that left little room for nuance. On the surface, we were a family of routines and inside jokes. Birthday dinners were sacred. Friday night poker games were untouchable. And vacations, God, vacations were like clockwork, carefully planned, every detail accounted for, as if chaos itself would have ruined the fragile harmony we all depended on. I had always thought I fit somewhere in the middle of it all, maybe slightly on the outside but close enough to matter. My role was simple: keep the peace, laugh at Mark's dumb jokes, nod at Lila's pointed remarks, and reassure my parents that life was fine, even when it wasn't. I had a comfortable rhythm, the kind that fools you into believing nothing could shake it, but the truth, well, the truth I ended up saying, wasn't something that could fit neatly into any routine. It wasn't subtle, and it certainly wasn't convenient. And for some reason, all the small acts of compromise and patience I'd built over years meant nothing the moment I crossed that invisible line. In hindsight, I can see it now. I was already standing at the edge of something I couldn't step back from. Something that would make every familiar face feel like a stranger. And yet, at the time, I was just talking. I've always been the kind of person who notices the little things, the way someone's hands twitch when they lie, or the subtle tension in a room before anyone says a word. Maybe that's why I saw what was coming before anyone else did, even if I didn't fully understand it myself. I like to think it makes me empathetic, but lately I've started to wonder if it just makes me painfully aware of things everyone else chooses to ignore. There's a loneliness in noticing too much, a quiet kind that creeps in while everyone else is laughing or distracted. I remember nights lying awake in my own apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations, reading between lines that weren't meant to be read. You start imagining the worst, not because you want to, but because ignoring it feels worse. That's where I was, drifting in that half-lit space, my mind looping over the small contradictions I noticed in our group, the offhand jokes Mark made about someone who wasn't there, the strange way Lila avoided certain topics, the silence when my parents looked at old family photos. I tell you this not to make myself sound clever or insightful. I'm not. I'm just a guy who notices things, and notices that noticing has a cost. There's this subtle fear that once you speak what you see, everything could crumble. But at the same time, there's this stubborn need to be honest, even if it hurts. Even if no one thanks you for it, and yet, despite all that, I never imagined that the cost would be so absolute. That the very people I trusted the most, the ones I thought would understand, or at least listen, would turn their gaze away and treat me like I had betrayed something sacred. It started with little things. At first, I brushed them off as coincidence. A lingering look from Lila that felt like judgment, a comment from Mark that didn't quite fit, a smile from my parents that seemed forced, like they were hiding something behind it. I couldn't tell if it was me overthinking or if the shift was real, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just in my head. I remember one evening, we were all sitting around the kitchen table, and Mark casually mentioned an event I didn't know about. At first, I laughed, assuming I had missed it in the flurry of work and life. But then I realized everyone else's eyes flicked toward each other, a shared glance loaded with some unspoken understanding I wasn't part of. I asked a simple question, "Wait, why didn't you tell me about this?" The room went quiet. Lila fiddled with her cup. My parents exchanged a glance so quick I almost missed it. Mark shrugged and said, "I don't know. Didn't think it mattered." That shrug, it wasn't casual. It was deliberate. And in that moment, the seed of doubt planted itself in my mind. Maybe I wasn't just outside the loop. Maybe I had become irrelevant. After that, the small cracks started to widen. Invitations that weren't extended, subtle changes in tone when I spoke, pauses that felt too long. Every interaction was a puzzle with pieces missing. And every time I tried to ask, to clarify, the answers were vague. Polite, evasive, it wasn't dramatic, not yet. But there was a tension in the air, a quiet weight that pressed on my chest whenever we were together. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant, was being deliberately kept from me. Things started unraveling faster than I expected. It was small at first, misplaced texts, half-hearted apologies, a laughter that stopped the instant I entered the room, but the pattern was unmistakable. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that maybe I was just imagining hostility where none existed. But every interaction chipped away at that illusion. I remember one night vividly. We were all at a casual dinner, the kind of Friday night hangout we'd done for years. I brought up a topic I thought would be lighthearted, just reminiscing about an old trip. Mark froze mid-laugh. Lila's fork hovered over her plate. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't read, the kind that makes your stomach sink without a word spoken. And then Lila muttered, almost under her breath, "Maybe some things are better left alone." For a moment, I thought I had finally discovered the problem, that perhaps someone had a secret they didn't want revealed. Relief, even, flashed through me, because at least I had a target now. Someone I could confront, someone who explained why the room had changed. I convinced myself it was Mark. Maybe he had done something reckless, and I'd unknowingly exposed it earlier in some careless comment, but the more I tried to piece it together, the more the clues contradicted each other. One conversation hinted at one story, the next hinted at another. Every lead I chased led to dead ends or deliberate deflections. And yet, the unease remained, gnawing at me, persistent and cold. By the end of that night, I was exhausted, not physically, but mentally. The people I loved, the ones I trusted most, were slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know if it was because of something I did, something they were hiding, or something I was too blind to see. After weeks of subtle tension and half-truths, I finally thought I had it figured out. I convinced myself I'd uncovered the reason everyone was treating me like an outsider. Mark had been hiding something, I was certain of it, a secret he didn't want me to know. Maybe it was a bad decision he'd made, or some financial mistake, or a personal betrayal I hadn't noticed. Whatever it was, in my mind, I was finally prepared to confront him, to fix things, to reclaim the trust one thought had been lost. I cornered him one evening, just the two of us, after everyone else had gone to bed. I explained what I'd noticed, the glances, the sudden silences, the strange behavior. I asked him directly, "Is there something you're keeping from all of us? Something I need to know?" For a moment, Mark hesitated. His face fell into that unreadable expression he wore so well. Then he sighed and said something that seemed like confirmation, "It's complicated, man. It's not really my place to say, but yeah, there are things going on I probably shouldn't have told you." Relief washed over me. I thought I had uncovered the truth. Finally, an explanation. Finally, a target for all the confusion and isolation I'd felt. That night, I went home believing I had solved the puzzle, that the fracture in our group was something I could manage, something I could mend once the truth came to light. It wasn't. Not even close. In my certainty, I didn't realize that the truth I'd convinced myself of was only a layer. A distraction. It was a red herring, carefully designed by circumstances I couldn't see yet. And trusting it, believing it, would cost me more than I could have imagined. I didn't expect it to hit me like it did. The truth didn't arrive in a dramatic confrontation or a confession. It arrived in fragments, tiny, mundane pieces that suddenly fit together like a puzzle I'd been staring at for months. It was Lila who finally let it slip, almost by accident. We were in the kitchen, just the two of us, and she was cleaning up after dinner when a comment slipped through. Something small, offhand, about someone I didn't know had been in danger. Her hands trembled slightly, and for the first time in months, I saw her vulnerability, the strain she'd been carrying quietly. I asked her to explain. At first, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she began to piece it together. And I realized I had been wrong about Mark entirely. He wasn't hiding a scandal or a betrayal. No, the real secret had been something far more delicate, and far more serious, than anything I'd imagined. Someone we all cared about had been at risk, and everyone had agreed, silently, to pretend nothing was wrong. They were protecting this person by maintaining the illusion of normalcy, by shutting me out when I kept pressing questions. The weight of it crushed me, not because I'd been excluded, but because I understood why, and then it clicked. Everything I had endured, the cold stares, the avoidance, the isolation, was a byproduct of that silent pact. My insistence on truth had exposed what everyone else thought should remain hidden. I had done the right thing morally, but it came at a cost. The people I loved had recoiled, not out of malice, but fear. Fear that I couldn't see yet. For the first time, I understood. Sometimes the truth isn't just inconvenient. Sometimes it's dangerous, and knowing it changes everything. After the truth finally came out, nothing returned to normal. The house felt emptier than it ever had before, even when everyone was physically present. The dinners I used to look forward to were silent affairs, punctuated by polite smiles and forced laughter. I realized that by exposing the truth, I had become an outsider not just in the moment, but permanently. My friends avoided certain topics around me, my parents spoke in careful, measured tones, and Lila, who had been the closest to understanding, kept her distance, almost as if touching me would reopen a wound we weren't ready to face. Even though I knew what I did was morally right, even though I had protected someone from harm that no one else had dared acknowledge. The cost was isolation. I started spending nights alone, walking through streets I had once wandered with laughter and companionship. I replayed the conversations, the looks, the tiny moments that had signaled the fracture before I even spoke. It wasn't bitterness I felt, it was a deep, quiet sadness, a recognition that some truths are too heavy for comfort, that moral courage can come wrapped in loneliness, and yet, there was a strange kind of clarity in it. I had acted in alignment with my conscience. I had revealed a danger that could have been catastrophic if left hidden. Even as everyone turned away, I knew I had done something that mattered. It was a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't come with applause. Sometimes it comes with empty chairs, cold stares, and the silent understanding that your life has changed forever, because you chose honesty over convenience. Even now, years later, I still feel the echo of that night, the moment when saying the truth changed everything. I walk into rooms and notice the glances, the pauses, the subtle ways people measure what they can say around me. Some nights, I wonder if I overstepped, if the world would have been easier had I stayed silent, but then I remember the person I protected, the quiet danger that no one else acknowledged. And I realize that ease, comfort, and belonging aren't always worth the price of someone else's safety. I may have lost laughter, invitations, and familiar warmth, but I also preserved something that mattered far more. Sometimes, I catch myself imagining a version of my life where I had stayed silent, where the truth remained buried. It's a tempting fantasy. Everyone still smiles, nothing is awkward, nothing breaks, but I know it's hollow. I would have lived with a secret I couldn't escape, knowing that my silence might have allowed harm to reach someone innocent. The strange thing is, I don't feel proud in the way people expect. There's no triumph, no satisfaction. There's just a quiet conviction that what I did was necessary, even if it cost me everything, and maybe that's the point, doing the right thing doesn't come with congratulations. It comes with choices that weigh on you, decisions that leave others unsettled, and a loneliness that few can understand. So now I ask myself, and I ask anyone listening, if you saw a truth that everyone else ignored, would you speak it? Knowing that you might lose everyone you care about? Or would you stay silent, safe in the company of those who love you, even if it meant letting harm go unnoticed?